Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee-ka. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I get together with students to help them build a foundation in the path to enlightenment. We're using this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, as our foundational text for this program. And each Sunday I go chapter by chapter, helping you guys to understand what is taught here and how to actually develop the mind on this journey to enlightenment, where the mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, no longer experiencing any discontent feelings, where the mind can eliminate its anger and frustration, agitation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are eliminated from the enlightened mind, along with all the other wholesome qualities that you cultivate, like focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. You'll notice your personal, professional relationships are blossoming. They're all at ease because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile any longer. And you'll notice you're not even in a bad mood, that it's physically impossible for the enlightened mind to experience a bad mood because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing that. So today we're going to be in chapter 1. We actually just recently restarted this program from the very beginning, where I did a few weeks of kind of helping students to get an overview of the path to enlightenment and really going in depth with the Eightfold Path. But now we're going to be starting from the very beginning of the book. So whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly, welcome to all of you guys. You'll be able to learn easily from this point forward, where you can get this book from our website by going to buddhadailywisdom.com. You can download it for free. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can order it on Amazon if you have access to that. Or if you're here in Chiang Mai, you can get access to it through our temple. We have printed versions where you can just essentially reimburse us for the printing cost. The way that we start each class is we start with some meditation so that you guys can start developing your meditation practice and really get better and better at meditating and really training the mind. And it also helps prepare you to be able to learn, because if you've done some training of your mind prior to a learning event, it will help you to retain the teachings better. So you can do this whether it's at a class like this or you're getting ready to go into a business meeting or something like this. You might decide to do a bit of meditation in order to prepare your mind for any kind of situation that you might be encountering. And it helps you to be able to learn and have your mind focused and concentrated, absorbing the teachings, understanding them, and being able to then reflect on them to independently verify them and practice them. So if you'd like to join for meditation, I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. And then after that, I'll come in with the guidance. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet. We'll just all be meditating together. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. Keep in mind that these chants aren't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's nothing mystical or magical. And I'm going to be teaching a 4-part series on the chanting to help students learn the chanting here in about another 3 or 4 weeks. We'll be doing that on Wednesday. You can see these chants from our website. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com and you click on free books, down towards the bottom, you'll see the chants that I'm using and the English translations of them. So if you'd like to join along in the chanting, if you know these, you're more than welcome. And then afterwards, as I mentioned, I'll come in with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Apivadeyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami สุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามิ นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตูอนุเตโรปุริสาดามมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in naturally through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to those of you guys joining in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Those of you guys that maybe have been attending regularly, or someone who might be brand new coming in today to be able to start learning the teachings of the Buddha. I'd like to welcome all of you guys. As I mentioned, each Sunday we go chapter by chapter in this book, helping you guys to understand the foundational teachings that you need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. And I share a talk on each topic from chapter to chapter. And today we're in chapter 1, which is titled Universal Teachings, Love, No Harm, and Good Morals. This is where you're learning about 3 kind of common teachings that you're going to see along several different teachings, several different traditions, several different ways that people might grow and develop to become a better and better human being. There's kind of this commonality that we see amongst all teachings. Well, there's definitely differences from one set of teachings to another, but you'll tend to see these general commonalities between certain traditions, whether it's Buddhist or Christianity, Hinduism, Muslim teachings, Judaism, any of these kinds of things. And I share this at the very beginning of the book in chapter 1 because sometimes when people are moving into the teachings of the Buddha, they might feel like they're kind of turning their back on what they've learned so far, whether it's in another tradition or maybe even what you were learning with grandma and grandpa or mom or dad. But it doesn't need to be seen that way. You can actually see these things as like a bridge, that the teachings of the Buddha, while in my opinion, they're very deep, they're very clear, they're very concise. They absolutely lead exactly where he said they do to this enlightened mental state. But when you're moving from one collection of teachings towards another, you might have concerns about what you've been doing in the past and what you're headed towards. So this chapter is really written as like a bridge, to be able to walk across this bridge and realize that you're going to see some commonalities and similarities between what you've maybe been exposed to in the past from these different traditions, or even grandma and grandpa in the teachings of the Buddha. But you're going to see a lot of uniquenesses in the teachings of the Buddha, because he focuses you on training the mind. Nothing in the teachings of the Buddha is based in belief. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning and investigating and examining his teachings. You're reflecting on those to independently verify them, and then you're practicing them, integrating his teachings into your day-to-day life in order to train the mind and uproot certain pollutions that are in the mind. This is what we were talking about last week, is the pollutions that are in the mind, the 10 individual fetters. And if you haven't been part of the program so far, you can always go back to YouTube, where we have a playlist that you can see the classes that I've taught so far, and you might decide to learn with some of those. Everyone's on their own independent journey to enlightenment, but it surely helps to have some background. But if you don't have the ability to go back and look at those videos, it's okay, because all the things that I already have taught, I'm going to be teaching them again in this program from this point forward. The first 4 weeks of the program is kind of like an overview to help people understand what's going to be taught in the future. So now from chapter 1, I'm going to be doing chapter by chapter. And you might decide to read the chapters before class or after class. And today I'm going to be discussing the universal teachings to help you guys understand what these are and how to benefit from them in your day-to-day practice in this journey to becoming a better and better human being on the path to enlightenment, getting to the point where you've purified the mind and you're no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. And then on Wednesdays, what I do is I do meditation with students, helping students to build up their meditation practice and open up to any and all questions that students might have. So as we go today, if you have questions, you're more than welcome to ask questions. You can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see those. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and then unmute your microphone, and you'll be able to ask any and all questions that you like through the live stream, through the Facebook, and through Zoom. Everybody will be able to hear you. Okay, so just to kind of help you understand why I teach these universal teachings, is that it helps a practitioner to observe that many traditions of teachings are founded in these same universal teachings. Essentially, learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha is to get this clarity that you're going to be able to see in his teachings, and how to become this improved individual in this journey in life, in this path forward, in the path to enlightenment. And you can see it not as you're leaving behind what you've done before, but as a continuation, where the things that you've already been working on, they've led you to a certain point, but now maybe you're looking to get deeper into some teachings that are going to really help you make your way to the rest of the journey, where the mind can be fully awake and you can experience the peace, the joy, the calmness and serenity of the enlightened mind, where you eliminate all those discontent feelings, where you're no longer experiencing any anger and sadness and frustration. You don't have bitterness and hostility in your mind. You're able to live harmoniously with all beings. And this just takes training of the mind. So this teachings of the universal teachings, it provides a bridge to help practitioners incorporate certain aspects of the teachings of the Buddha into their existing life practice, and realizing that they're able to walk across this bridge to be able to get more clarity on what it would take in order to lead the mind to this improved state of mind, where you can have harmonious relationships. And as you're learning the teachings of the Buddha, they are very detailed, they're very precise, they're very concise. Everything that I teach is based on the original words of the Buddha, and it's important that you learn in the original words of the Buddha, because then you'll actually see what he taught and what he didn't teach. And as you're learning and growing and developing, it's a gradual training, a gradual practice, and a gradual progress. You can't just snap your fingers and instantly implement the things that the Buddha is teaching. So you're going to need this gradual improvement. And yes, there's meditation involved in training of the mind, but there's a whole other host of teachings that the Buddha taught besides meditation that you're going to need to know in order to gradually make your way to enlightenment. And the core central teaching that the Buddha taught is called the Eightfold Path. And in 3 classes in the past, I went through each section of this using the words of the Buddha so that students can understand this to a certain degree. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing that again in chapter 4 and in chapter 5. You're going to be learning this Eightfold Path to gradually walk forward in developing the wisdom of the path to enlightenment. And as you're developing this wisdom of the path to enlightenment, it is detailed and it is going to take you gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress in order to be able to implement it and experience more and more results. But as you're making your way to that, if all else fails and you're having difficulties remembering what it is that you might decide to practice in any given situation that you find yourself in, this is where the universal teachings can be really helpful. Because if your goal is to produce wholesome results in your life, or what we refer to as wholesome dhamma, then it's wise decision making that's going to lead to those wholesome results. Whereas if you make unwise decisions, you're going to experience unwholesome results. This natural law of dhamma isn't anything mystical or magical. It's nothing to believe in. It's not about blame or fault or punishments and rewards. There's no being who's overseeing this. It's literally cause and effect, or action and result. And when you're making decisions either wisely or unwisely, you will experience either wholesome results or wholesome dhamma, and unwholesome results or unwholesome dhamma. And the goal would be to extinguish all your unwholesome dhamma, all your unwise decisions that you've been making, is to extinguish that when it's coming back to you, when you're experiencing the results of your past decisions. And then more and more making decisions through this eightfold path, this very detailed teaching that the Buddha shares. Well, if all else fails and you can't remember on your way to developing more and more wisdom of the Eightfold Path, then the universal teachings can be something that you choose to practice. And these are things that you can easily remember and choose to practice those. But ultimately, you're going to need to know the Eightfold Path, inside and out, backwards and forwards, up, down, left, right. That is the path to enlightenment. And I would advise any new student to study that in detail, using the resources that I share, because I'm using the original words of the Buddha, and I'm giving you examples all the way through, helping you to see not only what the teachings are, but how to apply it in your day-to-day life. And that's my method of teaching. But today, what I'm going to teach you is just something very simple and very basic. And then I'm going to open up to any questions that you guys have, because this is actually one of the shortest chapters in the entire book, where I'm just explaining to you what these universal teachings are and allowing you to take the opportunity to be able to see those correlations between other things that you've been learning. So the universal teachings are universal love for all beings, do no harm, and be a good moral person. You're going to see this commonality amongst many traditions, and even growing up with mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, they might have been teaching you these same kinds of things. Where the Buddha is teaching this universal love for all beings, essentially this relates to loving kindness and compassion for all beings. Because if you can be loving and kind and compassionate towards others, then this is what you're going to see that's coming back to you in your day-to-day life. But you're going to need a consistent long-term practice of loving kindness and compassion. Right now, I'm in a 4-part series of teaching students how to develop loving kindness meditation, so that you can essentially fill up your own mind with loving kindness, where you can kind of rewire your mind and go out into the world and be more loving and kind. What loving kindness is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. This is where you're not trying to judge other people to determine whether they deserve your loving kindness or not, but you just go out into the world with this active goodwill towards all beings, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And you practice that through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. But you're going to find that challenging to do with all beings, because the mind has certain pollutions in the mind, like we talked about last week, the 10 fetters. So as you're gradually bringing down the pollutions of your mind, and you're gradually increasing the wholesome qualities, you'll find it easier and easier in all your relationships to be loving and kind with the people around you. So the Buddha is teaching you this because as you put out love and kindness towards others, over time, this is what's going to come back to you. And you would like to do this without judgment. Sometimes we've been taught, don't respect others until they respect you. And if this is the way you treated things in the world, like with your loving kindness or your respect, where you're like, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me, or I'm not going to show loving kindness to you until you show it to me. And if everybody was practicing this in the world, nobody would have loving kindness for anybody. Nobody would have respect for anybody, because everybody's holding back and waiting for somebody else to show loving kindness or respect. So an enlightened being doesn't function that way. They make decisions that are based in wisdom, and they understand that it's wise to go out into the world and be loving and kind with all beings, and having this mental state where you have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then you would like to practice compassion. Compassion is the concern for the misfortunes of others. This is a mental state as well. We're going to talk about these when we get to chapter 14, which is the Brahma Viharas, because they're antidoting specific symptoms that are in the unenlightened mind. And compassion is the concern for the misfortunes of others. It's a mental state. It doesn't mean that you necessarily do something. That would be one's action. And maybe someone's practicing generosity to actually do something in order to help this person who is in unfortunate situation. But what compassion is like loving kindness, is it's a mental state that you cultivate in the mind where you have concern for others' well-being and you have concern for their misfortunes. So craving, desire, attachment, if you were worried and had anxiety about what other people are experiencing, that's the mind longing, yearning, and wanting people to be a certain way, and that's going to lead to stress and anxiety and worry. But if you were all the way on the other side where you were indifferent and you could care less about what happens to people, that's not compassion either. So you would like to be in the middle where you have concern for the misfortune of others. And whether you choose to take action upon that is up to you, of course. Everything's up to you. It's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. But what the Buddha teaches you in terms of this common teaching that I can see across all traditions from universal love of all beings is to have this compassion for other beings. And this is a mental state that you can cultivate on your journey to enlightenment. Then the Buddha, as well as other teachers, teach things like do no harm. The Buddha teaches it as part of right intention or right thinking or right thought. He teaches you to practice non-ill will or goodwill towards all beings, and harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because anytime you put any harm out, this harm is going to come back to you. This is the natural law of Dhamma, of cause and effect, or action and result. And here, these teachings that I'm sharing with you, you're going to be able to see some commonalities between other people's teachings. And we'll talk about that as we get towards the end of this. But here with do no harm, not only did the Buddha teach this, but other teachers taught it too, where you're not interested in causing harm to other living beings. Because if you cause harm, this harm is just going to come back to you. It's kind of like walking down the beach and you're kicking up sand and the wind blows it right back in your face. And you're disinterested in doing that. You don't walk down the beach and kick up sand and let it keep blowing you back in the face. You might have done that once or twice, maybe as a kid, but then you realize like, I don't like this. I'm not going to do this anymore. And that's what you need to be able to see with your day-to-day life, that when you're bitter and harsh and hostile to people, this just blows back on you like sand on a beach. And just like as a little kid, you realize that that's unwise and you stop doing it, you need to be able to do the same thing through training your mind, is to not be bitter and harsh and hostile to others. Because when you put that out, it's just going to come back to you. And the Buddha teaches you to be a good moral person, just like other teachers as well. There's certain moral conduct that the Buddha teaches as part of the Eightfold Path. His moral conduct aren't rules or commandments. What he's teaching you is the natural laws. Through right speech, right action, and right livelihood, he's explaining to you the things that could be harmful in terms of your speech or actions or your livelihood. And then you can investigate that and examine it. You can reflect on it to independently verify it based on your own direct experiences and what you've experienced in life, because you've done some of those things that he talks about. And then you can practice and you can improve your practice. So the teachings of the Buddha are for you to cultivate wisdom about all these different things and more. But one of the things that you're cultivating wisdom about are these natural laws and how they relate to the moral conduct that you choose to practice. And when you're practicing good, wholesome moral conduct, and that's what you're putting out, then that's what you're going to see coming back to you. So the Buddha doesn't have rules and commandments. If you were following rules and commandments, you wouldn't understand the why behind it. It's just somebody's rule and somebody's enforcing this rule. But that's not what the Buddha taught. He's helping you to understand these natural laws so that you can awaken and you can make wiser decisions. And now you can experience wholesome results. Because when we made unwise decisions related to the natural law of gravity, we struggled and we had difficulties. We fell down, we broke our toys, we hurt our elbows and our knees, and we had all kinds of trouble when we first started in life because we lacked wisdom of the natural law of gravity. But slowly but surely we gained wisdom of that. We started making wiser decisions, and now we don't struggle with the natural law of gravity. We can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes, and now we can navigate the world peacefully. But there's these other natural laws that the mind is unaware of as it's growing up and has a lack of wisdom in the mind, we go out into the world thinking that what we're doing is so wise, or maybe we think we have the very best intentions in the world. But if you haven't studied the Eightfold Path to understand right intention and right speech and right action and right livelihood, then the mind doesn't yet know these natural laws in a way that you've independently verified it and you've cultivated as wisdom, and then you've started practicing it. Because you can go into a conversation with what you think are all the best intentions in the world. And as you're talking and as you're having conversation, that conversation can blow up on you. And you look at it and you're like, what just happened? And the mind can be really confused about this when it lacks wisdom of the natural laws. So when you have wisdom of these natural laws, you can confidently enter into conversations, and now you can make decisions about your moral conduct, and you can see that you can get to a point where every single conversation you have produces wholesome results. And now you don't have to keep making unwise decisions that is producing difficulties and struggles, where you have broken relationships over and over and over again. You can get to the point where all your relationships are harmonious. So these universal teachings that you see in the teachings of the Buddha of universal love for all beings, do no harm, and be a good moral person, these are just very simple, very basic things. But the Buddha has much deeper teachings than this that is going to help guide you on this journey. But just like I mentioned, there's other teachers that have existed at different times in history that have shared essentially the same thing. Like this universal love for all beings, loving kindness and compassion for all beings. If you're familiar with the teachings of Jesus Christ, he might have said, love thy neighbor, right? And that's the way that he talked about it. But the Buddha is talking about it through loving kindness and compassion. When the Buddha is talking about the natural law of dhamma, of cause and effect, or action and result, if you're familiar with Jesus Christ's teachings, you might have known that he taught you reap what you sow. This is the natural law of dhamma. I'm not as familiar with Hindu teachings and Muslim teachings and Judaism and all the other things that are out there, but if you are familiar with those, you could probably go through these universal teachings and see the connections to Muslim teachings, Hinduism, Judaism, and all these other teachings that are out there. But what you're going to see in your journey with the teachings of the Buddha is it's going to get much deeper, and he's going to be able to share with you the teachings to train your mind, where you can see the results now in this life, that the condition of your mind in your life, your relationships is all improving. So this is what I have to share with you guys. And remember, this is something that you can fall back to if you ever need to remember to practice this universal love for all beings, doing no harm, and being a good moral person. But what you would ultimately like to get to is the deeper teachings, which is what I'm going to share with you as we go forward in this journey. If you guys have any questions, you can ask any and all questions about these particular teachings or any other aspect of the teachings of the Buddha that you would like to ask. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like by just unmuting your microphone. So do you guys have any questions that you would like to ask? Okay, looks like Paul has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, David. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Perfect. Thank you. It's my first time joining the Zoom meeting. I just discovered your podcast in the last month or so, but I had done meditation, various forms over the years. So I'm trying to follow yours at this point. And question, as far as the meditation itself goes, the mindful breathing, is that something that it should be just reserved for when we're meditating? Or is it something that we can turn to when we're trying, for instance, to fall asleep at night, or when we're, in our day-to-day stressed and we want to try to somehow relieve ourselves? Is it okay to use that mindful breathing technique? I know I've heard on your podcast that, you're not to use it when you're doing other things like gardening, et cetera, but I'm thinking in terms of, let's say trying to fall asleep, is it okay to use that in that situation example?
Yeah, the short answer there is yes. You can really meditate at any point that you would like to stop and meditate. But what you would like to be able to do is build up your meditation practice to 2 or 3 sessions per day and building up to 30 minutes or more. And this is something that takes gradual training, and it'll oftentimes take 6 months, a year, or 2 years to build up to that. And that's what you would like to kind of be doing on a regular basis. But then, if you'd like to use some of the breathing mindfulness meditation as you're falling asleep, this can be really helpful for you, that you're just focused on the breath, because sometimes when someone's falling asleep, their mind is kind of ruminating and almost can be a little bit obsessive. So as you're doing that, as you're falling asleep, I wouldn't suggest considering that as one of your 2 or 3 meditations for 30 minutes or more, but the benefits that you're cultivating in those sessions can be helpful for you as you're falling asleep, because you're training your mind to cut off and cut off and cut off and cut off. And this can be really helpful for you. Or say you're in a business meeting and it doesn't go well, and you can step away and you can go do 5, 10, 15 minutes of meditation. Again, you might not consider it one of your 2 or 3, but it's like a little touch-up meditation to really kind of help you in that situation, to train your mind to let go. So you can use the meditations in that way if you'd like.
Yeah, I just wondered if, like a mantra, which this is, this is not, I get that, is that you're not to use it unless you're actually meditating, to sort of reserve it for when you meditate. What I'm talking about is eyes open here, let's say during the day, and you're aware of being stressed, and you could try to, and I've done where I'm trying to do this mindful breathing while doing an activity. Is that something you should avoid doing?
Yeah, that would be trying to do 2 things at one time. The Buddha teaches singleness of mind, to do just one thing at a time, because the mind can only do one thing at a time. Where if like someone was typing out an email and trying to focus on the breath, the mind's not going to be able to do these 2 things. It's going to be rapidly cycling back and forth between email to focus. And then when you get to the end of your day, the mind can be overactive, it can be stressed and having anxiety, because this is what the mind has been doing. It's kind of like a racehorse running around a racetrack. When it goes to the barn, it's all hyped up and it can't calm down. So if you do that with your mind on a regular basis, that's what you're going to experience. So what you would like to do is just one thing at a time. If you're writing out the email, just write out the email. And then if you're done with that, or you'd like to take a break from that, then you pause and you do your meditation. And that's what you would like to be doing. And when you're falling asleep, as I mentioned, this can be helpful during that situation, but you just probably wouldn't consider that one of your 2 or 3 meditations. So you would like to have a dedicated, active, purposeful training session. That's what you would like to be doing with the meditation.
So when you're doing the mindful breathing, you should be having your eyes closed, and you should be, going through doing it as you described, and not trying to sometimes do it with eyes open as you're going through your day. You should never do that. You should keep it where your eyes are closed and you're actually meditating your 2 or 3 sessions a day, or it's okay to try to use it to help sleep at night, but not while doing other activities.
Yeah, that's all true. Although with walking meditation, you do it with your eyes open, and this is considered breathing mindfulness meditation. You do it with your eyes open, but it's a very intentional walking. So there is meditation that you can do with your eyes open, but usually when you're doing seated, lying, or standing positions with breathing mindfulness, you close your eyes, because that shuts down one of your sense bases where you're not taking in contact through the eyes. And now the mind has ability to go internal more, and you're able to be more introspective, and you're able to really cultivate the mind better that way than if you were like sitting on your front porch looking at traffic go by. Each time a car goes by, your mind's not going to be necessarily focused on the breath and be able to do that introspection. Whereas if you close your eyes, now your mind can go internal, because it's not getting that contact through the eyes.
Okay, one last question, please, regarding meditation is, should we be trying to relax? Like, should we be actively feeling whether we're tense and trying to release that tension? Letting go of the tension, is that something we should be trying to do as we are mindfully breathing.
Yeah, when you first start and you're getting established with your breath, that's an opportunity for you to start becoming aware not only of the breath, but what's going on in the body as well. And if you notice any tension in the shoulders or the neck or the back or anything like this is going to be coming from the mind. And you can calm the mind down and focus it on the breath. And this will tend to eliminate the tension, like in the shoulders or neck or back or wherever it is that you're experiencing that tension. You can also switch to like a lying position. This is really good to release any kind of tension in the body, because in the seated position, the muscles are engaged. But in the lying position, all the muscles are disengaged, where you can lie on your back face up. And the only thing you have to be aware of there is that sometimes the mind can have a tendency to fall asleep. And if that's the case, okay, then someone falls asleep, but then you would like to be sure that you do some more meditation later to be sure you get your 2 or 3 sessions per day in with 30 minutes or more. And that's where if you're noticing you have a tendency to fall asleep, this can actually occur regularly, especially as you first start training your mind, because the mind is working quite challenging to be able to do this meditation, and it can kind of get exhausted and tired. For the first 3 to 6 months, you can notice that the mind during meditation can have a tendency to fall asleep for some people. And then that's where the standing position and the walking position comes in, that you can use these positions to keep the mind more alert and attentive, where you won't have the tendency to fall asleep in those positions.
So just finally, when doing this meditation, if you notice your muscles are tense or whatever, it's okay to actively try to keep your body relaxed. Like when you notice you're tense, you release that tension as you're doing your mindful meditation. As your mindful breathing goes on and you notice tension, you let go of tension, and that keeps coming up because thoughts come up, you get tense. You go back to your mindful breathing and you actively try to release physical tension, like, muscles that are tightened, kind of thing.
Exactly. That's exactly what you would like to be doing. And usually when those things are going on, that's where the mind's starting to develop what's referred to as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. If you've learned the Eightfold Path with me yet, you heard me talk about the right mindfulness and those 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you become aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. So as you're meditating, you might start noticing more awareness of the body. And in those situations where you're noticing that tension, you would like to release it. And that's helping your mind to gain control and discipline, and so that you can now actively notice what's going on and then let it go as you need to.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. Pleased to help you.
Very helpful.
Yeah, nice to see you here online. Okay, it looks like Ted, you have a question, or maybe Kristen.
Hi, thank you, Teacher David. I just had 2 experiences this week that I just want to know if I could have handled them any better. There was one, and I was in a class, taking a yoga class, and there was a woman behind me, and we were sort of doing a forward fold, and she ended up sort of on my mat. And she was like kind of sweating and like all on my mat, and I realized how attached I am to my mat, because I immediately felt uncomfortable, and I was like, oh my God, what is she doing? And I want her off my mat. And suddenly I was no longer practicing my yoga. I was focusing on this woman on my mat, and sort of struggling with that. And immediately I wanted to teach her that that's not appropriate, and kind of going all through these thoughts in my mind. And then I caught myself. It's impermanence. This will end soon. She will be off my mat in just a few moments, and just let it go, and just kind of come back to my breath and sort of get back into my yoga practice. And so at the end of all of that, she got off my mat, she wiped it where she was sweating, which I appreciated. And I just thanked her for that. And I didn't speak of it again. I just sort of let it go and moved on with the class. And that was that. So I was just wondering, was there a better way to handle that other than, because I did want to my immediate thing was just like teach her that that's not appropriate, but that's not really my job, right? Like I don't need to teach anyone. It's just realize that I'm attached to the mat and that I just need to kind of like let her just be and just let that all go. Is that the right way to handle that?
Yes, that's perfect. And what you could also do is arise some loving kindness and compassion there for this person who's challenged. But your thought process and how you handled it is exactly the way you would like to handle it. More and more, you'll get to the point where those things aren't arising, where you're not feeling uncomfortable. You don't have that conceit coming up where you want to teach her and, tell her what she should or shouldn't do. But right now, that is coming up. But you handled it the way that I would suggest that you do it, which was cut it off, let it go, realize this is an impermanent situation. And each time one of these things happen, you'll be able to let it go easier and easier. And eventually it'll get to the point where it won't even arise. Just right away as this happens, the mind will just be peaceful and joyful, and your loving kindness and compassion will be right there. Oh, ma'am, are you okay? Is there something I can help you with? Or you might be helping her up or whatever it is that you decide to do. But your mind won't go to where it went this time. So these kinds of situations are wonderful to be able to show the mind where your attachments are. So now that you know you're attached to your yoga mat, what I would suggest you do is you let some people borrow it. That's going to help you let go of your attachment to your yoga mat. I know that might be challenging for you. You're like, oh no. And now might not be the time. You might not be interested to do it right away. But when you are able to let go of these kinds of attachments, then like the attachment to your husband behind you that you probably have, that'll become easier, right? Like the idea of letting go of that attachment is a lot harder when you've got all these other little attachments in place. So when your mind gets used to letting go of the yoga mat or letting go of the food or letting go of, this thing or that thing, then more and more your mind kind of is more pliable and it'll be willing to let go of a stronger attachment like to your husband or if you guys have kids or something like that. So that's what I would suggest you do here is now at some point start kind of like finding a way that you can let other people borrow your mat. And of course, not everyone's going to be interested in doing that. Maybe you take an extra mat with you and you let your really favorite mat be borrowed by somebody else and you use the secondary mat. And this is going to help your mind to let go.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Let me see if we have any questions coming in anywhere else. All right. I don't see any questions anywhere else. As I mentioned, this is a really short chapter and it's a very short teaching. Sometimes our classes go longer or go shorter, but today this was what I had to share with you guys, just kind of get you guys thinking about how the teachings of the Buddha can be a bridge for you and serve as a bridge to helping you walk forward towards improvement in your day-to-day life. And you can see that the more that you learn the teachings, the more you practice them, you'll be able to see the truth that these teachings are helping you. So if you haven't read this chapter yet, you can go ahead and read it. It's very simple and straightforward chapter to read. It's just kind of easing you into the book. The real heart of the book starts like chapter 3 and 4 and 5 and so forth all the way through. That's where the real heart of the book is. So we're going to be in those chapters here soon. Next week, we're going to be in chapter 2, which is titled, Why Study the Teachings of the Buddha? And if you read that chapter before class, you'll understand what I'm teaching there. But some people like to read after class, so it's up to you. We're going to do class a little bit differently next week. Rather than me really teaching the way that I do typically, what I'm going to do is open up to a discussion where those of you guys that are in Zoom and Facebook and YouTube, we've been studying now for about 6 weeks in the group learning program. And this is an ideal time for us to have more of a discussion because you're going to see why I think it's wise for somebody to study the teachings of the Buddha in that chapter. But instead, I would like to kind of organize a interactive discussion where all of us can discuss why is it that we've chosen to study the teachings of the Buddha, and we can have a more interactive discussion. And this is an opportunity for people to get to know each other, know names of each other, and kind of learn a little bit about each other. You'll see how I do this. It's a little bit different than what we do in our other classes. So if you guys would like to come to that, it's a great time to become interactive and learn from each other and get to know some of your classmates as well. So if those of you guys that are in Facebook and YouTube typically, if you'd like to come in into Zoom, that's a great opportunity for you to do that, because then we can be more interactive with each other that way. But whatever you choose is totally up to you. So that's going to be next week on Sunday. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be in part 2 of our 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. So I'm going to be doing loving kindness meditation together, and then I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys might have. So thank you all for joining. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys need help, you're always welcome to reach out through the classes, through the Facebook group, sending private messages, or you can schedule personal guidance through our website. So perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Be well and have a lovely rest of your day, whatever you choose to do. We'll see you next time. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.